"Dad," she whispered, "I want her as my mom." Marcus Webb went completely still. His 7-year-old daughter Lily was pressed against his chest in the fluorescent light of the Lakeview urgent care waiting room. Her right hand was wrapped in a blood-spotted dishcloth. She'd stopped crying 20 minutes ago, which worried him more than the crying had. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking across the room with an intensity he recognized, that focused stillness she got when something had captured her complete attention. He followed her gaze. A woman sat near the magazine rack. Her knees were angled toward the door, like she hadn't fully committed to staying. She was maybe 32, auburn hair, pinned back unevenly. The kind of thing you do in a car mirror when you're trying to hold yourself together. Her coat was camel-colored and too thin for December in Chicago. She wasn't reading. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was looking at nothing in particular, in the careful way of someone working very hard to appear okay. There was a bruise along her left jaw. Fresh. Blue-edged. Marcus stared at the woman. Then he looked down at his daughter, and his heart stopped. Lily hadn't said the word mom unprompted in 4 years. Not since her mother left. Not since the note on the kitchen table. Not since the silence that followed. He felt something crack open in his chest. Something old. Something he'd learned to carry so quietly he'd almost forgotten it was there. The woman across the room hadn't heard. She was still looking at nothing. 3 hours ago, Marcus thought I'd never seen this woman before in my life. And now my daughter's telling me she wants her as her mother. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do with the ache those words had created. So he did what he always did. He kept going. The morning had started the way most of Marcus's mornings started. In the dark. At 4:45 a.m. With his phone alarm vibrating against the nightstand and his body protesting the interruption of sleep it hadn't gotten enough of. He lay still for a moment, listening. The radiator in the living room was clanging, that arrhythmic sound like someone kicking a pipe. He'd long since stopped waking up for it. The wind was doing something against Lily's window, the one with the broken latch he'd stuffed with a towel and hadn't told her about. She knew anyway. She always knew. That was one of the things about Lily. She noticed everything and mentioned almost nothing. He got up. He dressed in the dark because the overhead light in his bedroom had burned out 5 days ago and he hadn't replaced it yet. Bulbs were $6. $6 was a choice between light and something else. Right now, the something else was winning. In the kitchen, he opened the refrigerator and looked at what was inside. Half a stick of butter, a jar of mustard with about 2 tablespoons left. 3 eggs he'd been rationing since Sunday. A Ziploc bag with 4 slices of bread that were going stale but weren't quite there yet. He closed the refrigerator. He'd go to the store after his shift. He'd calculated it on the back of an envelope last night. $22. That was what he could spend and still make rent. $22 for a week and a half of food for 2 people, one of whom was a growing 7-year-old who was already small for her age and didn't need to be smaller. He made Lily's lunch first. Peanut butter on the bread that was almost stale. The last banana, which was browning but still edible. A small container of water because they were out of juice boxes. And he wasn't going to buy more when water was free. He looked at the lunch bag when he was done. It looked thin. It looked like what it was. He added 3 crackers from the box on top of the refrigerator, the one he kept there for emergencies. Then he took a paper napkin from the stack by the sink and wrote what he wrote every day. You are brave and kind, and I'm proud of you. Love, Dad. He folded the note small and tucked it next to the banana. It was what he did every morning. It was what his own father had never done. Lily's door creaked when he opened it. She was already awake, lying on her side with her eyes open, watching him in the gray pre-dawn light that came through the towel-stuffed window. Hey, kiddo, he said. Time to get up. I know, she said. I heard you. He sat on the edge of her bed. She was wearing the pajamas with the small horses on them, the ones that were getting too short at the ankles, the ones she refused to give up because her grandmother had sent them 2 Christmases ago. And her grandmother was dead now, and the pajamas were what was left. How'd you sleep? Okay. She always said okay, even when he knew it wasn't. Her room was small. It had been a closet once, before someone decided to call it a bedroom. She had a bed, a small dresser, and a bookshelf made of boards and cinder blocks that Marcus had built and she'd painted blue. On the walls, she'd taped drawings, dozens of them, horses and rockets, and self-portraits with her signature at the bottom in careful letters. The drawings were the first thing you saw when you opened the door, and Marcus thought sometimes that this was intentional, that she'd arranged them so visitors would see color first, and smallness second. "I'm going to the store after work," he said. "Do you want to come?" Her eyes lit up. Not excited exactly, just certain. Yes. It was the way she said it, as if going to the grocery store with her father was something worth looking forward to, when it should have been ordinary, when it should have been nothing. She shouldn't have to feel that way about a grocery store. "Okay," he said. "I'll pick you up at 4:30 from Mrs. Chen's." She nodded. Then she sat up and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his shoulder in the wordless way she did when she wanted to say something, but didn't have the language for it. He held her. He breathed in the smell of her hair, the specific kid smell of sleep and shampoo and something else that was just her. "I love you," he said. "I know," she said. "I love you too." He got up. At the door, he turned back. She was sitting in bed with her hands in her lap, watching him go with that particular expression she wore when she was committing something to memory. "See you later, alligator," he said. After a while. Crocodile. It was what they always said. It was what his father had never said to him. He closed the door softly and went to work. Marcus Webb was 35 years old. He drove a delivery truck for a regional logistics company 6 days a week, starting at 5:30 in the morning and ending whenever the route ended, usually between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, depending on traffic and whether the dispatcher was in a good mood. The route covered the near northwest side of Chicago. Industrial blocks, residential streets, small commercial strips. He'd driven it so many times he could do it with his eyes closed, navigating by muscle memory while his mind ran through the calculations that never stopped. How much gas was left in the truck? Whether the timing belt would make it another month? How many stops before he could pick up Lily? What they'd eat tonight? Whether he could afford the field trip permission slip that had been sitting on the kitchen counter for a week? $12 for a trip to the planetarium that Lily hadn't asked about, because she already knew the answer. He thought about these things while he drove. And he thought about Lily. And sometimes he thought about Rebecca. Lily's mother had left when Lily was 3. Not dramatically. There'd been no argument, no door slammed, no screaming match that the neighbors could hear. Just a morning when Marcus had woken up and found a note on the kitchen table, written on the back of an envelope in Rebecca's handwriting. "I'm sorry. I love Lily. I'm not built for this." That was all it said. He'd read it 3 times, standing in the kitchen in his underwear with the morning light coming through the window, and Lily still asleep in the next room, 3 years old, unaware that her life had just changed shape. He'd folded the note and put it in the back of a drawer, where it still was. He didn't hate Rebecca. He'd tried in the beginning, because hatred seemed like the appropriate response to a person who walks away from their child. But hatred required energy, and he didn't have any to spare. Everything he had went to Lily, to making sure she was fed and clothed and safe and loved, to showing up for the school conferences and the winter concerts and the parent volunteer days, where he stood in the back of her classroom in his work jacket, helping second graders glue cotton balls onto cardboard clouds, feeling out of place, and feeling at the same time completely at home. He showed up. That was the whole of it. That was what he could do. He thought about the rent increase coming in January, $40 more, which sounded small but was 60 hours at his second job. About Lily's teacher saying she'd been quieter than usual this fall. He showed up scared every single day. The shift ended at 3:15, which was early. Marcus used the extra time to stop at his apartment and change out of his work coveralls into jeans and the gray sweater Lily had picked at Goodwill. The one she said made him look like a dad in a movie. He didn't know what movie she meant, but he wore it whenever he could. Mrs. Chen lived in the apartment 1 floor below theirs. She was 74 years old and watched Lily after school for a rate that Marcus suspected was well below market. He'd never asked why, but he knew that Mrs. Chen had lost her own son to a car accident 15 years ago. And he knew that Lily reminded her of someone. He didn't press. He just thanked her every day. And Lily made her drawings sometimes. And once a month, Marcus fixed whatever needed fixing in her apartment. The leaky faucet, the cabinet hinge, the window that stuck. Lily was waiting on Mrs. Chen's couch when he arrived. Backpack already in, coat already zipped. She was ready. She was always ready. "Hey," he said, "how was school good?" She always said good, even when it wasn't. They walked down the stairs together, Lily's hand in his, her purple mittens slightly too big because they were from the resale shop. And the resale shop didn't have her exact size. In the car, she told him about her day in fragments. A boy named Derek had said something mean about her shoes, the ones with the split at the toe that Marcus had been patching with electrical tape for 2 weeks. She didn't tell him what Derek said. She just mentioned it and moved on. Her teacher had read a story about a dog who got lost and then found his way home. At lunch, she'd sat with a girl named Maya, who didn't talk much either. Then she said it again. "The store smells like bread. I like that. You said that this morning." "I know. I'm reminding you in case you forgot." He looked at her in the rear view mirror. This small, serious person who kept track of things, who reminded him, who noticed everything and said almost nothing. "I didn't forget," he said. She nodded, satisfied. The shop and save on Clark Street was crowded the way it always was on a Tuesday afternoon, full of people who'd just gotten off work, people trying to shop before the dinner rush, people wandering the aisles with the glazed expression of someone who'd forgotten what they came for. Marcus got a handbasket, not a cart. A cart was too big. A cart implied an amount of shopping he wasn't going to do. Lily walked beside him, her hand loose in his when the aisles were wide enough, tucked in her pocket when they weren't. She didn't ask for things. She never asked for things. She just looked at them as they passed, her fingers trailing along the edges of boxes and bags, not wanting, just feeling, noticing. They moved through the store methodically. Marcus had calculated the list on the back of a receipt in the parking lot. $22, pasta 2 boxes, canned tomatoes, a block of cheddar that was on sale, a carton of eggs, half a dozen bananas that were starting to brown. Marked down to 60 cents. He reached for the oranges. Lily had mentioned oranges 3 weeks ago, not asked for them exactly. Just seen them on a billboard and said, "Those look nice." The way she said things she wanted without expecting them. The bag was $2.49. He looked at it. He looked at the bananas. 60 cents. He put the oranges back. He didn't look at Lily, but he could feel her watching, the specific weight of her attention on the side of his face, the way she noticed, the way she didn't say anything. She touched his arm. Her fingers were small and cold from the produce section. "The bananas are better anyway," she said. He stopped. "Oranges are too much work," she continued. Her voice was matter of fact. "Practical. You have to peel them." He looked at her then. Her face was serious, reasonable, giving him an out without making him take it. She was 7 years old. She shouldn't have to do this. "Yeah," he said. His voice was steady. He made it steady. "Bananas are better." She nodded satisfied, and they kept moving. But something in his chest had cracked open and closed again so quickly he almost didn't notice. Except that for the next aisle and a half, he had to blink more than usual, and he wasn't entirely sure why. They were in the cereal aisle when they heard the commotion. It came from the produce section, which they'd just left. The sound of something heavy falling. Then a sharp exclamation. Then a different kind of sound. A low, pained noise. Marcus knew that sound. He knew it from his father, a man capable of real pain and incapable of showing it loudly. He rounded the corner without deciding to. Lily was right behind him. An elderly man, maybe 75, with white hair and a gray wool cardigan under his open coat, was on the floor near the apple display. He was sitting half upright, one hand pressed to his knee, his face tight with the effort of not showing how much pain he was in. The floor around him was wet from the produce misters. There was no wet floor sign anywhere. Standing nearby, not close enough to be helpful, was a man in an expensive blue coat with a shearling collar. He was looking at his phone, with the focused neutrality of someone who'd decided the situation wasn't his problem. And crouching on the floor next to the old man was a woman. She had auburn hair pinned back unevenly, a camel-colored coat that was too thin for the weather, a cut on her cheekbone. Not fresh, but recent, the kind of cut that came from an impact. She was speaking to the old man quietly, asking if he could move his leg, if he'd hit his head, if the pain was sharp or dull. Her hands were steady, her voice was calm. She was scanning the floor around him, checking for glass, checking for hazards, doing all of it without looking up at anyone else. Marcus stood at the entrance of the aisle and watched her work. There was something in the way she moved, not just kindness, competence, the kind that came from practice, from repetition, from being the person who helped so many times that it had become instinct. A store employee appeared from the back, a young man in a red vest who looked at the scene with an expression that was mostly about paperwork. "Ma'am," he said, "were you involved in this?" The woman looked up. Her eyes were gray, clear. "He fell," she said. "The floor is wet. There's no sign. I saw her bump into him." This came from the man in the blue coat. His voice was flat and certain, the voice of someone accustomed to being believed. She was reaching past him and knocked him over. The woman's expression changed. Not dramatically, just a slight tightening around her eyes, the micro-expression of someone absorbing a blow they'd expected. "That's not what happened," she said. Marcus had been standing there for about 15 seconds. Lily was at his side, her hand loose in his. Her attention focused on the woman with an intensity he could feel like heat. He stepped forward. It was him, he said. Blue coat. Everyone looked at him. He hadn't planned to say it. It had simply been true, and he'd said it, the way you sometimes tell the truth because not telling it feels worse. He was reaching for something on the top of the display. Marcus continued. He knocked it into the gentleman. She was already down there helping when I came around the corner. The man in the blue coat looked up from his phone. He and Marcus looked at each other for a long moment. The man had the quality of someone who hadn't been directly contradicted in a while, and didn't know what to do with it. The small, affronted stillness of a person encountering friction in a world that usually gave way. "I have somewhere to be," the man said, and he walked away. Marcus watched him go. Something about the way he moved. Something about the way he hadn't looked at the old man once. Hadn't checked if he was okay. Hadn't done anything except look at his phone and lie. The store employee helped the old man to his feet. The woman stayed with him until his daughter arrived 10 minutes later, answering questions for the incident report, making sure he was steady before she stepped back. Then she turned and looked at Marcus. Not with gratitude exactly, more with the steady, appraising look of someone reassessing a situation. Her eyes moved to him, took him in. The work jacket, the basket with the pasta and the cheddar, the browning bananas. Then they moved to Lily, who was standing very still, looking back at the woman with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. "Thank you," the woman said, "for saying something." He was lying, Marcus said. Something passed across her face. Not surprise at his agreement. Recognition. The particular expression of someone for whom being lied about was not a new experience. He was, she said quietly. Lily, who'd been listening with the total attention she gave to things that mattered, spoke. "He had mean eyes," she said. Both adults looked at her. "The man in the blue coat," Lily clarified. "When he said he saw you bump the old man, he wasn't looking at the old man at all. He was just looking at you." She shrugged slightly, the small movement of someone filing an observation. "That's what mean eyes are," she continued. "When you look at someone but you're not really seeing them." She paused, "as he knows." The woman stared at Lily for a long moment. Then she said, "You're right, that's exactly what it is." Lily accepted this and looked back at the bananas in Marcus's basket. Outside the parking lot was worse than it had been. Chicago in December, after dark. Temperature had dropped to 17 degrees. The pavement was a thin layer of compressed snow over ice. The kind of surface that looked safe and wasn't. Marcus was carrying 3 bags. Lily was carrying the bread and the bananas. He was fumbling with his key fob when the plastic handle on one of the bags tore. It happened fast. He lurched for the cans. Caught 2. Missed the 3rd. Pivoted sideways trying to regain balance. Stepped directly into Lily's path. She went down. He heard the sound she made. It would stay with him for a long time. A short, sharp intake of breath. And then nothing. Which was somehow worse. She'd reached out with both hands to catch herself. And her right palm had come down on the curb edge where someone had dropped a juice bottle that had shattered. The jagged neck was standing upright in the ice. He was beside her in an instant. The spilled groceries forgotten. His hands going to her automatically, her shoulders, her face, then her hand, which she was holding curled against her stomach with her eyes squeezed shut. "Lily, let me see." She showed him. The cut was about 2 inches long, across the meat of her palm. Not deep enough to be catastrophic. deep enough to be bleeding steadily in the cold. He pressed his handkerchief against it. His grandfather's habit. One of the few things he'd inherited, clean white cotton folded in his pocket every day. He pressed hard. "Okay," he said. His voice was very steady. He'd learned to make it very steady. "We're going to the clinic on Belmont." She nodded. Her face was white. The tears were right there at the surface. But she wasn't letting them fall. "Dad," she said. "Yeah, you're still holding the can of tomatoes." He looked down. He was. He'd been holding it this entire time without noticing. He put it in his jacket pocket. It was absurd. Heavy against his hip. Completely absurd. And Lily's mouth did something that was almost a smile. Which was the point, which was why she'd said it. He gathered the salvageable groceries one-handed and carried her to the car. The Lakeview urgent care smelled like antiseptic and old carpet. The fluorescent light made everyone look slightly unwell. Marcus approached the front desk with Lily still in his arms. My daughter cut her hand. Glass. She slipped outside. "Fill this out, please," the woman at the desk said. She slid a clipboard across without looking up. "Insurance card if you have one." He didn't. He almost said it. Then didn't. There was no point. Either they'd treat Lily or they wouldn't. Saying he didn't have insurance wouldn't change anything except how they looked at him. He took the clipboard to a row of plastic chairs near the window and sat down with Lily still in his lap. She was quiet against his chest. Her breathing was even, her bandaged hand resting in her lap. She'd moved past the initial shock into something steadier, which was how Lily handled things. She absorbed them, and then she got calm. He was filling out the forms, writing his address in block letters, when she went still. Not tense, not frightened, just still. In the way she got when something had caught her full attention. He followed her gaze, and there she was, the woman from the grocery store, sitting near the magazine rack with her knees angled toward the door, her coat buttoned to her throat, her hands folded in her lap, the bruise on her jaw more visible in the fluorescent light. Blue-purple. Fresh. She was looking at nothing in particular. She was working very hard to look like she was okay. Lily watched her for a long moment, then she leaned up and put her lips close to Marcus's ear. "Dad," she whispered, "I want her as my mom." And now they were here, in the waiting room, with those words hanging in the air. Marcus didn't know what to say. He'd never known what to say about the mom-shaped absence in Lily's life. He'd answered her questions when she asked them, honestly and without embellishment, naming what he knew and not inventing what he didn't. But he'd never known how to fill the space that Rebecca had left. Had never known whether he was supposed to try or whether trying would make it worse. Lily didn't ask about her mother often. When she did, the questions were specific, practical. What color was her hair? Did she like music? Was she funny? Questions that could be answered without requiring Marcus to explain why someone would leave. He had no answer for why. He had a theory, which was that some people encounter the particular weight of a life and know with clarity that they can't carry it. Rebecca had looked at the shape of motherhood and had known, earlier than she should have admitted and later than she should have acted, that she wasn't going to be able to do it. He didn't hate her for knowing. He just wished she'd known sooner. Now, watching Lily watch this stranger, he wondered if he was seeing the shape of what she'd been building in silence all these years. Not a wish for a specific person. Just a recognition. "Lily," he said quietly. She looked at him. "We don't know her." "I know," Lily said, "but she's like us." "What do you mean?" Lily considered the question with the seriousness she brought to everything. She notices things Lily said finally, and she doesn't say everything she notices. She keeps it inside. "Like me." She looked back at the woman across the room. "And she's scared," Lily added. "But she's being brave anyway." "Like you." Marcus's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that he wasn't brave, that he was just doing what he had to do because there was no alternative. But he didn't say anything, because Lily would know it wasn't entirely true. The truth was that he was scared almost all the time. Scared of not being enough. Scared of failing her. Scared of the timing belt giving out and the rent going up and the winter being too cold and the food running out. But he did it anyway. He got up every morning at 4:45 and drove his route and made her lunch and showed up. He did it scared. Maybe that was what bravery was. The triage nurse called Lily's name after about 20 minutes. The nurse who handled the wound was competent and brisk, with the manner of someone who'd been doing this for a long time and had decided efficiency was a form of kindness. She cleaned the cut under running water while Lily sat very still on the examination table, her feet not reaching the floor, her free hand curled in her lap. Confirmed it didn't need stitches. Applied a series of butterfly closures with the precision of someone who'd done this particular procedure hundreds of times. Wrapped the hand in clean white gauze. Lily sat through all of it without making a sound. Marcus could see by the set of her shoulders how much effort the stillness was taking. The breath held slightly too long between exhales. The controlled discipline of a child who decided not to make a fuss. "She's brave," the nurse said, in that particular voice that talks about a child as though the child isn't there. Lily looked at her steadily and said nothing. She had opinions about being talked about. She was too polite to express them. They returned to the waiting room and sat back down in their original chairs. Lily was holding her wrapped hand with an expression of cautious ownership, turning it slightly, examining it from different angles. "It's bigger than it needs to be," she said. "The wrap. It's like a club." She demonstrated the limited range of motion available. "It'll be smaller tomorrow," Marcus said. She considered this, accepted it, put the hand back in her lap. About 10 minutes later, a door opened from the back hallway, and the woman from the grocery store came through. She had a small bandage on her left cheek now, just below the bruise, a fresh white square of medical tape that hadn't been there before. She stopped just inside the door, looked at the exit, looked back at the room. Then, as if she'd made a decision but her body hadn't fully committed to it, yet she crossed the waiting room. She didn't come straight to them. She went to the row of chairs, one over from Marcus and Lily, set her bag down, took off her coat and folded it over the arm of the chair. Then she sat. She angled her body slightly toward them, but not intrusively. A gentle orientation, leaving the choice of how to respond entirely to them. She looked at Lily's hand. "Does it hurt?" She didn't perform the question. Didn't use the theatrical warmth adults sometimes deployed with children. The over-brightness that signaled effort. She just asked. The way you ask something you actually want to know. Lily considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "A little. The bandage is tight. They do that so it doesn't bleed through. It should ease up in about 20 minutes once the wrap settles." Lily looked at her with new interest. "How do you know I'm a nurse practitioner?" The woman paused. "And my brother cut his hand on a broken jar when we were kids. I took him to a place like this." Another pause, a small memory being handled carefully. "He cried through the whole thing, loudly. The nurses thought I was torturing him." "I didn't cry," Lily said. "I know. I noticed." Something in Lily's face shifted. A small release. A muscle that had been carefully held going soft. She looked at the woman with an expression Marcus rarely saw her offer on short acquaintance. Something open. Something trusting. Marcus watched this happen. He'd spent years observing how people interacted with his daughter. He'd watched teachers and coaches and well-meaning neighbors, and the occasional date who thought engaging warmly with the child was the right approach. Sometimes it was. More often it wasn't quite right. A frequency slightly off, an effort slightly too visible. Very few people managed what this woman had just done. She'd made a space and waited. She'd given Lily full authority over whether to step into it or not. She'd met her exactly where she was. "I saw you in the store," Marcus said quietly. "The produce section." The woman looked at him. Her expression was careful, the way of someone who'd learned to assess before assuming. "I saw you too," she said. "How's the man, the one who fell?" "His daughter came about 10 minutes after you left. He's fine. Sore knee, no break." She nodded. Then quietly, "Thank you for saying something." He was lying. Something passed across her face. Recognition. He was. Lily spoke again. "He had mean eyes," she said. "When he said he saw you bump the old man, he wasn't looking at the old man at all. He was just looking at you." Both adults looked at her. "That's what mean eyes are," Lily continued. "When you look at someone but you're not really seeing them." She considered this, then added, "He knows." The woman looked at Lily for a long moment. "You're right," she said. "That's exactly what it is." Lily accepted this and looked down at her bandaged hand. "I'm Elena," the woman said. She said it to Lily first, which Marcus noticed. I'm Lily. This is my dad. Marcus. Elena looked at him. Her eyes were gray and direct and tired in a way that went deeper than one night. Your daughter is remarkable, she said. I know, she smiled. Just barely. The first real expression he'd seen from her. Does she get that from you? Lily answered before he could. He says, I get it from myself. But he doesn't think he's remarkable, and he is. So I probably get it from him even though he doesn't know it. Elena laughed. It was a short sound surprised out of her, and something in her face changed when it happened. A softening, a loosening of something that had been held very tight. Marcus watched it happen and felt something move in his own chest that he couldn't quite name. Lily fell asleep about an hour into the wait. Insurance verification was taking longer than expected. Marcus was navigating it with the front desk in careful installments, saying just enough to keep the process moving without saying the part where he didn't have coverage, without mentioning how many extra shifts he'd need to pick up to pay whatever this was going to cost. Lily was in the chair next to him with her head on his arm, breathing slowly, her wrapped hand resting on her knee. She'd simply drifted off between one moment and the next, the way children do when they're exhausted enough to stop fighting it. Elena hadn't left. She sat with her coat in her lap now, turned slightly toward the window where the snow was still falling. She doesn't sleep like this anywhere, Marcus said quietly, so as not to wake Lily. She's usually a light sleeper, has to check that the locks are good twice before bed. Elena looked at Lily. Something in her expression came undone slightly. She feels safe, she said. She's 7. She should feel safe everywhere. She will, or she'll learn to carry it very quietly, like most of us. It wasn't pessimistic exactly. It was just the particular honesty of someone who wasn't performing comfort. You said your brother Marcus said. Elena was quiet for a moment, looking at the window. He was sick when we were kids, for a long time. Our parents worked a lot. They had to. So I was with him most of the time after school. She stopped. Started again. He's fine now. Has 2 kids of his own in Portland, but I spent about 4 years of my adolescence in waiting rooms, not very different from this one. She paused, and I learned that scared kids don't need noise. They need stillness. Lily's doctor told me something like that, Marcus said, after her mother left. Elena looked at him, not with pity, with recognition. How old was she? 3. Does she remember her? Some things? I'm not sure which memories are real and which are stories she's assembled from things I've told her. I try to be honest about the parts I know. That's the most you can do. She said it as a fact, not a platitude. The television changed to a commercial for a car dealership. A man in a loud jacket promising deals that sounded too good to be true. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that has a shape. The man in the store, Marcus said, with the blue coat. Elena was quiet. Then his name is Garrett. We were together. She corrected herself. The tense was new. We're together. He owns a property development firm. He's very good at seeming reasonable. I noticed. He's very good at making everything seem like my fault. She said it without drama, which made it heavier somehow. He's been doing that for 2 years, and I kept thinking there'd be a point where I saw it clearly enough to trust my own perception. Tonight was that point, I think. She touched the bandage on her cheek, not a gesture he was meant to see, just an unconscious thing, a hand finding where it hurt. He told me I startled him. Marcus looked at the bandage, looked at the bruise beneath it. He wasn't at the store by accident, he said. No. Are you safe? She looked at him. Something raw flickered in her eyes and then was carefully set aside. I will be, she said. I just need to figure out the next few steps. She paused. I'm not usually this forthcoming with strangers. You don't have to be. I know. She looked at Lily sleeping against Marcus's arm. She makes it easier, Elena said. Somehow. She listens like she's already decided to believe you. Marcus followed her gaze to his daughter. Yeah, he said quietly. She does. 9:17 p.m. The glass door opened. Marcus saw him before Elena did. She'd turned back toward the window, watching the snow which had thickened again. Garrett came through the door with the particular motion of someone who considers himself welcome anywhere. Same blue coat, expression that might look like concern from a distance. He crossed the waiting room and stopped 2 feet from Elena. There you are, he said. I've been looking all over. The warmth in his voice was calibrated precisely. Elena went still. Not afraid, exactly. The stillness of someone who just moved from one state into another. She turned. I'm fine, Garrett. You didn't answer your phone. His eyes flicked to Marcus without moving his head. A specific dismissal. Who's this? Someone I met, Elena said. He sat down in the chair on Elena's other side, which meant he was now flanking her. He began speaking in a low, reasonable voice. Something about overreacting. Something about coming home. Something about a clinic downtown with better doctors. Everything framed as concern. Lily stirred. Her eyes opened halfway. Unfocused. She saw Garrett, then she was awake. She sat up slowly, looked at Elena, looked at Garrett, pressed closer to Marcus's side. Garrett glanced at her. Yours, he said to Marcus. Cute. He turned back to Elena. I have the car outside. It's cold. Let's get you somewhere warm and talk about this like adults. Elena said she needed air. She stood. Garrett stood immediately. Marcus stood too. Garrett looked at him then. Really looked at him. Taking in the work jacket, the worn boots, the general quality of a man who'd been on his feet for 14 hours. You're a delivery driver, Garrett said. She doesn't need rescuing by a delivery driver. I didn't offer, Marcus said. His voice was mild. Lily was looking at Garrett. She didn't say anything. She just looked at him with the flat, clear gaze of a child who'd learned early to read the temperature of a room. Garrett put a hand on Elena's elbow. Light. Proprietary. Let's go. Elena looked at his hand on her elbow. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, No. Garrett's expression didn't change immediately. The practiced patience of someone who was accustomed to waiting out resistance. Elena. His voice was careful now, lower. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking very clearly. You hit your head. You're emotional. I didn't hit my head. Her voice was level. You hit my face, and then I didn't hit my head. Silence. You're being dramatic, Garrett said. You know how you get? I know exactly how I get. Something changed in Elena's voice. It was level now. Without heat. The voice of someone who'd practiced this. I get quiet. I stop arguing because it's easier. You count on that. Elena, I get small. I stop taking up space. I make myself invisible in my own apartment because if I'm invisible, maybe today will be okay. Maybe today you won't find something wrong with how I loaded the dishwasher, or what I said at dinner, or how I looked at you when you came home. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're being, I'm not finished. The room had gone quiet. The receptionist had looked up. I get confused, Elena continued. I start thinking maybe I did say something wrong. Maybe I'm difficult. If I could just be quieter. Just take up less space. She stopped, breathed. I did that for 2 years. I did it until I couldn't recognize my own face, until I couldn't trust my own memory, until I apologized for things I hadn't done because it was easier than waiting to find out what I had done wrong. Her voice was absolutely steady. That ends tonight. I'm not dramatic. I'm not emotional. I'm not confused. I'm clear for the first time in 2 years. She stood straighter, and I'm done. Lily stood up. No sound. No words. She just stood, 4 feet tall, 7 years old, bandaged hand against her chest. She looked at Garrett with flat, clear eyes. What's wrong with her? Garrett's voice was amused, but something flickered underneath. Nothing's wrong with her, Elena said. She just sees things clearly. She's a child. Yes, and she can see exactly what you are. Garrett looked at Marcus. Control your kid. She's just standing there, Marcus said, and you're leaving. The receptionist's hand was on the phone. Garrett calculated. This is a mistake, he said to Elena. Probably several of them, Elena said. Goodbye. He left. The door opened and closed, and the room was just a room again. Elena sat back down. She put her hands in her lap, looked at them. Lily reached across the space between their chairs and put her small, gauze-wrapped hand very lightly on top of Elena's hands. She didn't say anything. She just rested it there. Elena looked down at Lily's hand. Her face did something complicated, a gathering, and then the slow release of something held for a very long time. She didn't cry. She just breathed, deep and uneven and real. They sat like that for a while. The television cycled through weather reports. The fluorescent light hummed. The snow fell outside. Insurance verification resolved at 9:45. When they came back out, Elena had her coat on, buttoned again, bag over her shoulder, ready to leave. Marcus stopped in front of her. "You have someone to call my friend Nadia," she said. "She's in Wicker Park." "She'll come. That's a 40-minute drive in this weather." "I know." She said it without self-pity. "It was just information." "I can drive you," Marcus said. "I'm going north anyway. Wicker Park is 5 minutes out of the way." Elena studied him. "You don't know me. You took care of my daughter for 2 hours without being asked." "She took care of me," Elena said. She looked at Lily, something warm and honest in her expression. Lily stepped forward. "Our car smells like fries," she said. "Dad drops them sometimes. He says it's an accident, but I think it's on purpose because it smells nice." She paused. "But it's safe." "The car." "It's safe." Elena laughed. A real laugh. Sudden and unguarded. The kind that escapes because it has to. It changed the air in the room. Marcus felt it in his chest. "Okay," Elena said. She looked at Marcus. "Okay." In the car, Lily fell asleep. Almost immediately. Her cheek against the window. Her wrapped hand held against her chest even in sleep. Marcus put his jacket over her. The city was quieter than usual. Snow did that. Muffled things. Smoothed the edges. Made Chicago feel briefly like somewhere gentler. They drove for a few minutes without talking. Then Elena said, "Can I tell you something?" "Sure. I stayed with him for 2 years because I kept thinking I was misreading the situation, that I was the problem, that if I was just clearer, more patient, more reasonable." She stopped. "I'm good at my job. I read situations for a living, and I couldn't read my own life clearly enough to trust what I was seeing." Marcus drove. He let the sentence sit. "That's the part that gets you," he said finally. "Not the obvious stuff, the way it makes you doubt your own perception." She looked at him. "How did you resolve it, Lily?" He said it simply. "You can fool yourself about a lot of things. It's harder when a kid is watching." Elena looked at the rearview mirror, at Lily's sleeping face. "She's remarkable. She is. She almost never takes to people like that." They arrived at a brick 2-flat in Wicker Park. Porch light on. Solid looking. Warm. Marcus put the car in park. Neither of them moved for a moment. "I don't know what I'm doing next," Elena said. Not with distress. Thoughtfully. "There are about 15 things I have to figure out. One at a time. That's what my brother always says. Smart guy." She smiled. Different from the laugh. Slower. More personal. "He really is." She looked at the building, then at Lily, then at Marcus. "I'm not in a place to be anything right now," she said. "I want to be clear about that. I know. But tonight was—" She stopped, looked at the dashboard. "It was a kindness. From both of you. And I don't know how to—" She stopped again. "Let it stop." "You don't have to know how to," Marcus said. She looked at him. A long, direct look. Two people seeing each other clearly in the particular light of a difficult night. "Okay," she said. She opened the door. Got out. Turned back. Lily stirred, her eyes opened halfway. Unfocused. She found Elena standing in the doorway with snow falling around her. "You can stay," Lily said, her voice thick with sleep, "until the scary part is over." Elena stood in the open car door. Snow falling. Porch light behind her. She looked at the small, half-sleeping face of this child she'd known for 4 hours. She reached into the car, very gently touched Lily's hair. "Get some sleep," she said softly. "You were so brave tonight." Lily's eyes were closing, but she murmured something. Elena leaned closer. "What did you say? Come back," Lily whispered. "Okay." Elena looked at Marcus. She didn't say she would. She didn't say she wouldn't. She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then she stepped back, closed the door, walked toward the porch light without looking back. Marcus watched her go. Coat too thin. Step steady. The porch light stayed on as she went inside. He sat for a moment, heater running, Lily breathing slow behind him. He had her name, Elena Marsh. He didn't have anything else. No number, no way to reach her. He hadn't asked because she said she wasn't ready, and he'd meant it when he said he knew. But he had her name, and she had his, and the laugh, sudden, unguarded, and Lily's hand resting on Elena's hands. These were not small things. He put the car in drive and pulled away. The city was quiet and white. Check engine light glowing amber. Heater humming. He didn't know what came next. Rent increase. Timing belt. Lily's teacher worried about her being too quiet. But tonight, something had moved. Not solved. Just moved. A woman had laughed in a waiting room. A child had held a stranger's hand. Two people had told each other true things. That was the beginning of something. The snow covered the tracks behind them, making the road look new.